Alright, welcome back YouTube, and thank you for tuning in to Manny's School of Art. Today we're going to be looking at watercolors. Watercolors to me have always been an extension of drawing. So I'm going to be demonstrating today how I created a similar painting to the one that I just showed you using some minimal colors and some very basic techniques. I'll put a list of the supplies that I use in the comments below, and I'll also put them in, have them scroll down across the bottom of the screen as well. Okay. This particular drawing is relatively easy to follow, so hopefully you guys will give this one a try. Please leave me a comment below and let me know how it turned out. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I went ahead and found some reference photos of a sea turtle that I wanted to work with, and then I began the actual sketch. I started the sketch by starting off with a box so that I can figure out the basic size of the sea turtle and the position and the angle of the shell. And then once that was done, I began to loosely rough in where the flippers were going to go, and the head and the neck and all that. Once the initial rough sketch was done, then I began to refine it. I need to take a little bit more time at this stage, as this will be the drawing that I will be using to apply my watercolors. So take a little time here, get the drawing pretty much the way you want it, and then we'll be ready to move on to the painting part. So before I begin to paint, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to use this product called Liquid Frisket, and I'm going to paint in the little areas that I want to protect. If you do this, make sure that you don't use a quality brush, because it will ruin your brushes. If you don't have one of these little applicators, you can just cut off the tip of a Q-tips and use that instead. But please do not use your good brushes, because it will ruin them. The second thing that I want to do is I want to tape the drawing onto a backing board. Alright, now that the frisket has had time to dry, I can go ahead and start painting the background. So I'm going to be using the wet on wet technique, and I didn't draw anything in the background because I want to do the bulk of the design with colors. So the wet on wet technique simply means that you take some clean water and you wet the area that you're going to paint, and then while the area is wet, you begin adding your colors. Notice how the frisket prevents the water from going inside of the turtle, because it created a bit of a barrier. So I can go ahead and just start adding my colors, and I'm letting the water do the mixing for me. So here I'm using phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and the alizarin crimson. Mixed up some green by using the yellow with a little bit of the phthalo blue. Now I want to use gravity to help me, so when I work on the part above the turtle, I just flipped it upside down so that the water is always dripping away from the turtle. Once I'm satisfied with the background, then I need to make sure that I dry it thoroughly. You can use a hair dryer to do this, or you can let it dry naturally. Then I can start working on the turtle. For the lower part of the turtle, I mixed up some burnt sienna with a little bit of the cadmium yellow just to warm it up a little bit. And then when I started working on the shell, I actually used a little bit of this color as well, but then I also mixed up some green with some cad yellow and the phthalo blue, and I kept it to the yellow green side. Notice that when I'm painting, I can paint right over the frisket. The frisket, like I said, protects the area, so I'm not overly concerned about those lines. Here you can see that I first put the darker color in, and then I'm using the green mixture that I did, and I'm mixing them together. Then using a tissue, I just give it a little dab to create a little bit of texture. Then I went back in with the same mixture and then just broke up some of those highlights. I wanted to add just a little bit more shadows in it here and there. Once this intermittent layer is completely done, I want to make sure that I once again dry the work thoroughly because I want to create layers. So I need to make sure that the colors are completely dry before I move into the darker values. For the darker values today, I actually went ahead and used the ivory black and a little bit of water. Again, I'm painting right over the frisket. Um, I have not removed the frisket yet, and the reason for that, I want the stripes in between the spots to be light. So I'm using the frisket to help me with that. So I'm taking the time. This is where you start putting in your darker shadows. And the big thing about when putting the shadows in is you want to make sure that you're fading them out. You don't want to leave a bunch of outlines when you're putting in shadows. Because watercolors tend to be see-through, when you're trying to get those really dark colors, you sometimes have to give them more than one layer or go over them a few times in order to get them dark enough. For this particular video, I purposely did not use any ink because I wanted to do the whole thing using nothing but watercolors. Once the initial painting of the sea turtle is done, you want to once again make sure that you dry it thoroughly. Once it's completely dry, then you can go ahead and remove the frisket. Now you'll notice that the frisket is a little bit on the sloppy side, and that's normal just because of the applicator. So once the frisket has been removed, you have to go in and start refining the painting. So I'm using my detail brush to basically correct the areas that have frisket, that have too much white showing. This is where you start making all your final refinements. So I'm gonna, in the area behind the turtle, I'm fixing the blue parts, the water parts, and then on the turtles, I'm fine tuning the details. In the areas between the scallops, those areas are not white. Um, so I used the frisket just to keep them nice and light, but now I need to go back in and put in some soft shadows just to so that they look more natural. Right now they just look like a bunch of white outlines, and that doesn't look right. After that, it's just a matter of continuing to refine the painting until you get it to the level that you want. Here I've switched over to my fine detail brush, and I'm going through one more time with the painting and checking and making sure that everything is the way that I wanted it. Some areas needed to be darkened, some areas needed to be a little bit crisper, so that's where the detail brush comes in. Um, One thing that I forgot to mention is before you do any of these little fine details, make sure that you dry the painting one more time so that the details will stay where you want them to. Otherwise, it'll kind of like bleed and run and into other parts. So here's the finished product. I hope you liked this video. Please let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, if you like what you're seeing, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.